History is filled with brilliant ideas that vanished into silence. We will uncover 32 medieval devices that disappeared from common use, yet their hidden blueprints are embedded in the technology you rely on right now. By the end of this journey, you will see the modern world through an entirely new lens. How did a 2,000-year-old computer predict celestial events with stunning precision? Why did a concrete recipe that self-heals for millennia get lost for centuries? What forgotten ingenuity is hiding inside your pocket? How often do you look at an everyday object and wonder about the ancient minds that first conceived its purpose? A storm-tossed ship sinks into the deep blue off the coast of a tiny Greek island around 70 years before the Common Era. For 2,000 years, its treasures lay scattered and silent on the seafloor. Then, in the year 1900, sponge divers stumbled upon the wreck. Among the shattered marble and bronze statues, they recovered a corroded, lumpy mass of bronze and wood. It seemed unremarkable at first, just another piece of ancient debris, but when it cracked open, it revealed something that would baffle historians for decades. Inside were intricate bronze gears precisely cut and arranged in a complex assembly. This was the Antikythera Mechanism. For a long time, no one knew what to make of it. How could such a sophisticated device exist 2 millennia ago? Researchers like Dr. Tony Freeth have since pieced together its secrets, revealing it to be the world's oldest known analog computer. This wasn't a simple clock. It was a mechanical cosmos in a box used to predict the movements of the sun, the moon, and the planets with stunning accuracy. Its heart was a system of differential gears, a technology so advanced that nothing comparable would be seen again until the 19th century, when it reappeared in early automobile transmissions to allow wheels to rotate at different speeds. Imagine turning a hand crank on the side of this wooden case. Through a beautiful interplay of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, the mechanism would calculate celestial cycles. One dial could show the phase of the moon on any given date, a tiny, rotating pearl sphere displaying the lunar cycle. Another tracked the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. It could even predict solar and lunar eclipses, warning of celestial events years in advance. This was not magic. It was pure, brilliant engineering, a physical model of the universe's mathematics built from gears and levers. Its principles are the direct ancestors of the analog computers used before the digital age. The Antikythera Mechanism proves that the concept of a programmable, geared computer was alive in the ancient world. So what does its existence imply? What other complex technologies, born from the minds of classical thinkers, were lost to the Dark Ages, their blueprints crumbling to dust while their fundamental ideas slept for centuries, waiting to be rediscovered? This single device forces us to reconsider the entire technological landscape of the ancient past. While the Antikythera Mechanism modeled the heavens, another ancient invention harnessed a more earthly terror. Picture a Byzantine warship, a Droman, cutting through the dark waves of the Mediterranean. Without warning, a torrent of liquid fire erupts from a bronze tube mounted on its deck. This is not ordinary flame. It clings to everything it touches, sailing through the air like a roaring dragon and burning even on the surface of the sea. Water cannot extinguish it. For the enemies of the Byzantine Empire, this was Greek fire, a weapon that felt like a supernatural punishment. Its exact recipe was a state secret so closely guarded that it vanished from history, its formula still debated by chemists and historians today. The base was likely a form of crude petroleum, perhaps enhanced with pine resin for stickiness and quicklime, a substance that ignites upon contact with water. This created a napalm-like gel that was both persistent and utterly terrifying. The delivery system was as ingenious as the fuel itself. It was pumped through a pressurized siphon, a bronze tube called a cherisiphon, which allowed operators to project the fiery stream with force and precision. This was not a simple pot of burning oil. It was a primitive flamethrower, relying on principles of fluid dynamics and pressure that would not become common again for centuries. The psychological impact in naval combat was immeasurable. To see fire, the sailors' oldest fear, dancing uncontrollably on the water itself, shattered morale and decided battles. The empire maintained its monopoly through draconian secrecy. The knowledge was confined to a single family, and revealing it was an act of treason punishable by death. When that family line or the empire itself eventually fell, the secret died with them. This raises a profound question. Is some knowledge too dangerous to preserve? The pressurized siphon that spat Greek fire is a direct, if chilling, ancestor to the modern flamethrower, and even to the aerosol spray cans we use today. The principles of containing and directing a volatile substance under pressure remain fundamentally the same. So why did such a powerful military advantage disappear? Perhaps its components became too scarce, or the artisans who understood its mysteries were lost to war or time. Its mysterious nature forces us to wonder what other potent chemical innovations, born from ancient laboratories, have vanished without a trace. The same sea that swallowed the Antikythera Mechanism also lapped against harbor walls built by the Romans, structures that have endured for 2,000 years while modern counterparts crumble after just decades. In the heart of Rome itself stands the ultimate testament to this lost material science, the Pantheon. Its vast, unsupported dome is a marvel that still defies easy explanation, having weathered centuries without a single crack from the elements. The secret was not in its design alone, but in the very stuff it was made from: Roman concrete. This was not the brittle Portland cement we use today. It was a living, breathing material that grew stronger with age. Modern materials scientists have discovered that the Romans used a special ingredient, a volcanic ash called pozzolana, which they mixed with lime and seawater. This combination triggers a remarkable chemical process. When tiny cracks eventually form, rainwater seeping in reacts with the pozzolana and lime, forming new crystalline structures that literally fill the gaps. The concrete heals itself. Think of it like the human body clotting a wound, a built-in repair system activated by the very thing that causes damage. This self-healing property is why Roman harbor walls, constantly pounded by salt water, are actually stronger now than when they were first poured. The Romans were master chemists, tailoring their concrete mixes for specific jobs. For massive arches and domes, they used a lighter aggregate of volcanic rock. For foundations and breakwaters, they used a denser, more robust mix. They understood their material on an intuitive level that we are only now beginning to decode with electron microscopes. Look at a modern concrete overpass, often requiring constant, expensive repairs after just 50 years. Then look at the Roman aqueducts, still standing proudly in the landscape, or the Colosseum, its skeleton enduring far longer than any modern stadium. How could a formula so revolutionary, so demonstrably superior, simply vanish from the collective knowledge of civilization? The fall of the Roman Empire fractured the supply chains and specialized knowledge required to produce it. The specific volcanic ash, the meticulous mixing process, the understanding of the chemical reaction, all of it was scattered and eventually forgotten. Today, laboratories are in a race against time to reverse engineer this ancient wonder, hoping to unlock its secrets for a more sustainable future. What does it say about our own progress that we are desperately trying to learn what a Roman engineer took for granted? In a museum basement in Baghdad sits a small, unassuming clay jar that challenges everything we think we know about ancient technology. Discovered in the 1930s at a Parthian-era site, this jar dates from roughly 200 years before the Common Era to 200 years after. It looks like a simple vase, but inside, archaeologists found a sealed copper cylinder and an iron rod, isolated from each other by an asphalt plug. To some researchers, this assembly is no mere storage container. It is the Baghdad Battery, a possible ancient galvanic cell. The principle is strikingly simple. If the jar were filled with an acidic electrolyte, something as common as vinegar or grape juice, a chemical reaction would begin. The acidic liquid would interact with the two different metals, causing electrons to flow from the iron rod to the copper cylinder through the liquid, creating a small but measurable electric current. This is the exact same foundational science behind the modern battery, a voltaic pile invented by Alessandro Volta 2,000 years later. A single cell would have produced only about 1 volt, a tiny tingle, but multiple jars linked together could have generated a more significant charge. So what would an ancient civilization do with such a subtle, invisible power? One compelling theory suggests electroplating, the process of using electricity to bind a thin layer of gold or silver onto another metal surface. This was a known art in Mesopotamia, with beautiful gilded objects surviving to this day. The conventional explanation is that artisans used mercury, a toxic and dangerous method. But what if a safer, electrochemical process was their secret? A bank of these jars could have provided enough current to electroplate a small artifact, leaving no trace of the method behind except the finished object itself. Other theories are more speculative, perhaps involving medical therapy or creating a mysterious tingling sensation during religious rituals. Yet many mainstream archaeologists remain deeply skeptical. They point out that no wires have ever been found with these jars, and no electroplated objects from the period show definitive proof of an electrical process. The asphalt seal could have simply been a waterproof stopper for holding sacred scrolls, with the iron and copper being coincidental contents. This is the central mystery of the Baghdad Battery. We have the physical object, and we know it could work, but we lack the smoking gun that confirms its intended purpose. Are we looking at a forgotten fragment of ancient electrical engineering, or are we projecting our modern understanding onto a mundane relic? This single clay pot forces a difficult question. How many other artifacts do we misinterpret because we underestimate the ingenuity of the past? The very possibility that a 2,000-year-old civilization might have harnessed a fundamental force of nature, only to have that knowledge flicker and die, changes the entire landscape of technological history. It suggests that the path to our electrified world was not a straight line, but a road with many forgotten turns. A bronze sphere hisses and spins in the library of Alexandria, a marvel that feels out of place in the ancient world. This was the Aeolipile, built by the engineer Heron around the 1st century of the Common Era, and it was the world's first working steam engine. At its heart was a simple yet profound principle. A sealed kettle of water was heated over a fire, producing steam that traveled through pipes into a hollow bronze ball. The steam then escaped from 2 bent nozzles or L-shaped tubes protruding from the sphere's sides. As the pressurized steam shot out, the sphere whirled around on its bearings, a mesmerizing dance of metal and vapor. This was not just a clever trick. It was a physical demonstration of jet propulsion, operating on the same principle that would much later be defined as Newton's 3rd law of motion. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. The force of the steam rushing out in one direction created a force that pushed the sphere in the opposite direction, causing it to rotate with surprising speed. Hero and his contemporaries saw the thermal energy of the fire converted directly into the kinetic energy of motion. Yet, for all its brilliance, the Aeolipile was largely seen as a wonder, a temple curiosity, or a philosopher's toy. It was not used to grind grain, pump water, or power a ship. The ancient world possessed the fundamental blueprint for an industrial revolution, but it never built upon it. Why did this happen? The economic and social structures of the time may hold the answer. Slave labor was abundant and cheap, reducing the incentive to develop labor-saving machines. The intellectual climate prized philosophical understanding over practical application for mass production. The Aeolipile remained a brilliant demonstration, a seed that fell on barren ground. Its true legacy, however, is undeniable. That same principle of using steam to create rotational force is the foundation of the massive steam turbines that generate most of the world's electricity today. The steam that spins those colossal turbines is in essence the same force that spun Hero's bronze sphere. It forces us to ask a difficult question. How many other world-changing inventions were born as mere amusements, their potential lying dormant for centuries because the right conditions for their adoption never arrived? This missed opportunity directs our attention to other mechanisms that were used, but perhaps not to their full potential, devices that harnessed the very wind itself. The sheer mechanical force of Archimedes' claw must have seemed like the wrath of the gods to the Roman fleet besieging Syracuse. As their quinqueremes, massive wooden warships, drew near the city walls, a long wooden beam would swing out over the water. This was no ordinary crane. At the end of the beam hung a heavy, iron grappling hook, operated by a complex system of pulleys and counterweights hidden within the city's defenses. When the hook was dropped onto an approaching ship's bow, soldiers inside the walls would shift the counterweights. The entire principle of leverage would then come into play. The beam, acting as a giant lever, would lift the front of the ship clear out of the water. For a terrifying moment, the vessel would hang suspended in mid-air, its crew thrown into chaos. Then, with a sudden release, the beam would drop its catch, dashing the ship against the rocky shore or capsizing it into the sea. Ancient historians like Polybius described the scene as one of pure pandemonium, with Roman sailors fearing that they were fighting against an invisible, supernatural foe. This was not just a weapon of physical destruction, it was a masterclass in psychological warfare. The sudden, inexplicable violence from an unseen machine shattered morale more effectively than any volley of arrows. Modern engineering historians reconstruct the claw as a testament to Archimedes' profound understanding of basic physics. The rotating beam was a lever, the pivot point was the fulcrum, and the counterweights provided the mechanical advantage to multiply human strength 100-fold. It was a simple machine used in a devastatingly complex way. You can see its direct descendants today in the cranes that build our skyscrapers and the wrecking balls that tear them down, both using the same principles of leverage and pivoting force to manipulate massive weights. Yet, the historical reality of the claw lies in a hazy space between documented account and legendary tale. The primary descriptions were written long after the siege, and no physical evidence has ever been found. Does this mean it was merely a dramatic invention by ancient chroniclers? Or does its absence from the archaeological record speak to the ephemeral nature of wood and rope, materials that would rot away to nothing, leaving only the echo of their terrifying power? The very idea of such a machine forces us to ask where we draw the line between fact and folklore when the machines themselves have turned to dust. Archimedes' genius lay in scaling up simple principles to a monumental level, creating defenses that felt less like engineering and more like a force of nature. An archaeologist's brush gently clears the dust from a piece of perfectly clear rock crystal, unearthed from the ruins of an Assyrian palace in Nimrud. It is not a jewel or an amulet, but a carefully ground oval about 3,000 years old. To a modern optician, its purpose is immediately familiar. This is the Nimrud lens, a hand-ground piece of quartz engineered to bend light. Its slightly oval shape and crude focal point, converging light to a spot about 11 centimeters away, suggest it was no accident of nature or simple ornament. Someone 3 millennia ago understood the fundamental principles of optics. They possessed the skill to take one of the hardest substances on Earth and shape it into a tool that could manipulate reality itself, magnifying small objects or concentrating the sun's rays into a pinprick of intense heat. Imagine an Assyrian craftsman using this lens to inspect the minute details of a gold filigree or an ivory carving. His world of intricate work suddenly enlarged and brought into sharp focus. Or perhaps a priest used it to focus sunlight, igniting a sacred flame in a dramatic temple ritual. This small disk of crystal represents a profound leap in human thought, the moment we learn to use a piece of the earth to see the world more clearly. The line from this single lens to the modern world is unbroken. It is the great-grandfather of the glass in your eyeglasses, the complex array of elements inside your smartphone camera, and the massive mirrors of our most powerful telescopes that peer to the edge of the universe. All of them operate on the same simple, beautiful principle the Assyrian artisan discovered, that a curved piece of transparent material can gather and focus light. This discovery forces a haunting question. Was the Nimrud lens a singular, brilliant anomaly, or were such optical tools more common than the archaeological record suggests? How much practical knowledge of magnifying, of correcting vision, of seeing the very small and the impossibly far, was lost in the fires of fallen empires, only to be painstakingly reinvented centuries later? This ancient manipulation of light, of making the invisible visible, finds a strange parallel in another invention, one that sought to capture not just an image, but the very passage of time itself. A Viking captain stares into a featureless gray sky, the fog so thick it swallows the very sea around his longship, with no sun, no stars, and only a magnetic compass centuries away from European use. He is sailing blind across the treacherous North Atlantic. Yet he holds a clear, rhomboid crystal up to the sky, slowly rotating it before his eye. In the depths of the stone, a subtle, almost magical transformation occurs. Two faint, overlapping images of a hazy patch of light appear. He turns the crystal until the two images merge into one bright spot, and in that moment he knows. He has found the hidden sun. This legendary tool was the Viking Sunstone, and modern science has proven it was no myth. The crystal was likely a specific type of calcite known as Iceland spar, a mineral that possesses a property called birefringence. This means it splits a single beam of light into two separate rays, each vibrating in a different direction. Sunlight passing through our atmosphere becomes polarized, meaning its light waves vibrate in a specific pattern that shifts depending on the sun's position in the sky. Our naked eyes cannot see this pattern, but the Iceland spar crystal can. When you look through the crystal toward a patch of overcast sky, you see two faint images. By rotating the stone until these two images match in brightness, you can pinpoint the exact axis of the sun's polarization, revealing its location even when it is completely obscured by cloud or fog. Archaeologists have discovered pieces of Iceland spar on a 16th century English shipwreck, suggesting the technique survived long after the Viking Age. The principle is identical to the polarizing filter on a modern camera lens, which cuts glare by blocking specific directions of light vibration, or the liquid crystal display on your phone, which relies on manipulating polarized light to create an image. This was not magic, it was sophisticated observational science, a way of seeing the invisible threads of light that weave through our atmosphere. How many daring voyages to Iceland, Greenland, and even the coast of North America were made possible by this simple piece of crystal? It gave the Vikings a celestial compass when the sky itself offered no answers, a technological edge that allowed them to roam the open ocean with a confidence that would not be matched for hundreds of years. This mastery of the seas through hidden light suggests other forgotten maritime technologies, perhaps even methods for measuring the passage of time and distance on the restless, trackless water. The air in a Roman field hospital was thick with the scent of vinegar and herbs, a world away from the chaos of the battlefield. Here, surgeons worked with a terrifying precision, their hands guided by an array of instruments that would not look out of place in a modern operating theater. Excavations at sites like Pompeii have revealed their sophisticated toolkit, forged in bronze and iron. There were finely toothed bone forceps for extracting arrowheads, complex trephination drills with a central pin to prevent slipping while boring into the human skull, and a remarkably modern-looking vaginal speculum that used a screw mechanism to gently dilate for examination. Each tool was a masterpiece of ergonomics and purpose, designed for maximum effect with minimal tissue damage. The Roman bone lever, for instance, was a carefully shaped metal bar used to reposition fractured bones or pry them into alignment. In any modern orthopedic surgery, you will find its direct descendant, the elevator, a tool identical in form and function, used to lift bone fragments with the same precise application of leverage. This was not crude butchery, it was advanced medicine built upon centuries of battlefield experience and a surprisingly detailed, if imperfect, understanding of human anatomy. So why, after the collapse of Rome, did this medical knowledge not just stall, but actively regress for centuries? The complex supply chains for producing such fine metalwork broke down. The extensive, written knowledge of procedures was lost as libraries burned and the Latin language fractured. The very concept of a trained professional surgeon gave way to a darker age of superstition. It is a sobering thought that a Roman soldier wounded in Gaul had a better chance of skilled surgical intervention than a knight 1,000 years later. The principles of their craft, leverage, precision, and minimally invasive technique are the bedrock of modern surgery, yet they had to be painfully rediscovered. This mastery over the human body makes you wonder what other biological secrets the ancients possessed. Secrets that might have been as simple and as revolutionary as a single daily object. A single bronze ball falling from a dragon's mouth could announce a catastrophe hundreds of miles away. In the year 132 of the Common Era, within the Han Dynasty court, the scholar Zhang Heng unveiled a device that seemed to border on magic, the world's first seismoscope. It was a magnificent bronze urn adorned with 8 dragon heads, each holding a bronze ball in its jaws. Below each dragon sat a corresponding bronze toad, its mouth open in anticipation. The internal mechanism has been lost to time, but modern engineers have a compelling theory. They believe a heavy pendulum was suspended freely inside the vessel. When the faintest tremors from a distant earthquake arrived, the inertia of the pendulum would cause it to swing, even as the urn itself moved. This swing would trip a cleverly designed lever or latch system connected to just one of the dragon heads, causing it to release its ball with a clang into the waiting toad below. The direction of the earthquake was thus revealed by which dragon had spoken. The true brilliance of the device lay in its sensitivity. Historical records claim it once detected a quake to the west that no one at the court had felt, with news of the devastation arriving days later, confirming the instrument's eerie accuracy. The challenge for historians is that ancient texts describe the device's function, but not its precise mechanical soul. Was it a simple pendulum or something more complex, like an inverted pendulum that could sense more subtle horizontal shifts? Reconstructing it is a puzzle of interpreting poetry as much as engineering. Yet the fundamental principle is identical to every modern seismograph, which uses a suspended mass that remains still while the ground moves around it, recording the earth shudders on a rolling drum. Zhang Heng's invention was more than a curiosity. It was a prototype early warning system, a mechanical ear pressed to the ground, listening for the planet's deep rumblings. How many other methods for anticipating nature's fury were developed and then forgotten, their protective knowledge lost in the chaos of dynastic falls? This ancient desire to measure the immeasurable forces of the earth finds a parallel in another kind of instrument, one designed not to listen to the world, but to capture its very essence, drop by precious drop. A crusader's sword captured on a dusty battlefield must have felt like a weapon from another world. Its blade was not merely polished metal, but a flowing, watery surface alive with shimmering patterns, a damask of light and shadow. This was Damascus steel, a metal so sharp it could split a silk scarf falling through the air, so flexible it would not shatter against bone or armor, and so resilient its edge seemed to last forever. Its secret was born in distant Indian furnaces, where artisans created woot steel, ingots of ultra-high carbon steel that were the raw material for these legendary blades. The magic, however, was not in the ingot itself, but in the transformative art of the smith. Through a painstaking, secret process of repeated heating, precise forging, and careful annealing, the internal structure of the metal was reorganized. Modern metallurgists analyzing ancient blades with electron microscopes have found the stunning reason for its superiority. Embedded within the steel are carbon nanotubes and carbide nanowires, microscopic structures that formed naturally during the complex thermal cycling. These tiny reinforcements acted like a natural composite material, giving the blade its unparalleled combination of hardness and toughness. A feat of nanotechnology achieved a millennium before the term was even invented. The process was a form of crucible steelmaking, where the iron was melted in a sealed container with carbon-rich materials, then cooled and worked in a cycle that had to be perfect. A single misstep in temperature or timing would result in a brittle, useless bar. This was not just blacksmithing, it was a high-stakes alchemy passed down through generations. So why did this legendary art vanish? The specific iron ores from India, rich with just the right trace elements like vanadium, may have been mined to exhaustion. The trade routes that supplied the woot's ingots were severed by war and political collapse. The guilds of master smiths, who guarded their methods as closely as any state secret, may have died out without passing on the full, tactile knowledge required. Their understanding was not written in a book, but in their hands and their eyes, a wisdom as fragile as human memory. Today, the quest to recreate true Damascus steel drives advanced material science. Researchers are not just trying to forge historical replicas, they are studying its nanostructure to inspire new generations of super-strong, lightweight alloys for aerospace frames and cutting tools that never dull. We are using 21st century technology to reverse engineer an 11th century miracle. How many other material wonders have we lost because their creation depended on a unique and vanishing alignment of resource, knowledge, and artisan? The watery pattern on that ancient blade is more than beautiful. It is a map to a forgotten island of human achievement, a reminder that some secrets are written not on parchment, but in the very grain of the world. The rhythmic hiss of steam and the gentle trickle of water echoed within the sacred halls of an Alexandrian temple, a hidden symphony of gears and counterweights. Visitors would approach the heavy bronze doors, and as if by divine command, the portals would swing inward without a single hand touching them. Inside, a statue of a priest would raise its arm to pour a libation of wine onto the altar fire, the flames leaping higher in response. From a gilded cage, a mechanical bird would burst into a song of whistles, only to be silenced when an owl automaton swiveled its head to glare. This was the world of Heron of Alexandria, a first-century engineer whose automata were the wonder of the ancient world. These were not mere toys, but complex theatrical installations designed to inspire awe and reinforce faith through the illusion of divine presence. Historians of technology now recognize Heron's workshop as a cradle of robotics, where he masterfully combined pneumatics, hydraulics, and simple mechanics to create programmed movement. The secret behind the self-opening temple doors was a masterpiece of thermal engineering. A fire was lit on the altar, heating the air inside a sealed brass vessel hidden beneath it. As the air expanded, it pushed water through a siphon into a large bucket. The increasing weight of the water in the bucket, connected to a system of ropes and axles, would slowly pull the temple doors open. When the fire died down, the air cooled and contracted, creating a vacuum that siphoned the water back out of the bucket. A counterweight would then reverse the process, seamlessly closing the doors. This was a machine that responded to its environment, a primitive feedback loop powered by heat and pressure. Heron's genius extended to programmable carts that could change direction after traveling a set distance, driven by a falling weight that unwound ropes in a predetermined sequence. He designed a singing bird fountain that used compressed air and water to produce warbling chirps, and a self-refilling oil lamp that cleverly maintained its own fuel level using principles of buoyancy and hydraulic pressure. Each device was a small universe of cause and effect, a clockwork play where one action triggered the next. The principles he demonstrated, the use of programmed sequences and automated responses to environmental stimuli, are the direct ancestors of the robotic arms that assemble our cars and the animatronic figures that entertain us in theme parks. So why did this incredible flair for automation not spark an industrial revolution? Why were these machines confined to temples and theaters? The answer lies in the social and economic landscape. In a world powered by human and animal labor, there was little financial incentive to replace workers with complex, expensive machines. Heron's automata were marvels meant to demonstrate philosophical principles and elevate religious experience, not to grind grain or weave cloth. They were solutions to a problem no one had thought to solve. How many other paths to technological advancement have we missed because we were looking for spectacle instead of utility? This world of programmed movement, of machines that could perform a sequence of actions without human guidance, points toward an even more profound ancient ambition, the desire to build a machine that could not just mimic life, but measure the most fundamental property of life itself, time. The relentless rhythm of grinding stone echoed through the Provencal Valley, a mechanical heartbeat powered not by human hands but by the mountain stream itself. At Barbegal in southern France, the Romans built not just a mill, but a true industrial complex, a factory from the ancient world. Cascading down a steep hillside were 16 massive water wheels, arranged in 2 parallel rows of 8. Each wheel, fed by an aqueduct, turned a complex set of wooden gears that spun millstones, grinding enough grain in a single day to feed the entire nearby city of Arles, a population of thousands. This was not a quaint rural mill. It was a concentrated application of mechanical power on a scale that would not be seen again for centuries. The Romans perfected the vertical water wheel, a design where the force of falling water pressed against paddles or buckets on the wheel's circumference, causing the entire axle to rotate. This axle was connected to a master gear, which then engaged a smaller pinion gear, transferring the slow, powerful rotation of the wheel into the fast, grinding spin of the millstone. It was a simple, brilliant system for converting the kinetic energy of flowing water into useful mechanical work, but the Romans were not limited to this one design. They also developed mills with horizontal wheels, where the wheel lay flat in the stream and spun a millstone directly above it, a simpler setup ideal for smaller, rural communities. They even adapted the principle for other industries, creating water-powered trip hammers for crushing ore and fulling cloth, and sophisticated water-powered saws that could cut marble and wood with a consistency human laborers could never match. The core principle at work in every one of these machines is identical to what happens inside a modern hydroelectric dam. The falling water spins a massive turbine, which is in essence a highly evolved water wheel. That spinning motion drives a generator to produce electricity, converting the water's energy first into mechanical motion and then into electrical power. The Romans had mastered the first half of that equation 2,000 years ago, so why did this powerful technology not immediately transform the classical world? Why did the industrial age wait for the Middle Ages to fully embrace the watermill? The answer lies in economics and infrastructure. The Roman economy, while vast, was still largely built on slave labor. Building a complex like Barbegal required immense capital and sophisticated engineering, making it a state-run enterprise rather than a common site. The political and economic instability that followed the empire's collapse disrupted these large-scale projects, but the fundamental knowledge of the watermill survived in smaller, more resilient forms within monasteries and villages. These scattered mills became the seeds from which the mechanized world would eventually grow. If the Romans could so effectively harness the power of water, what other natural forces did they and other ancient cultures learn to command for their own ambitious purposes? A bronze figure stood poised on an ornate chariot, its outstretched arm unwavering. No matter how the chariot twisted through dust clouds or maneuvered in retreat, the figure's finger held true to the south. This was the south-pointing chariot, a mechanical marvel of ancient China that served as a relentless guide across the most featureless deserts and plains. It was not magic, and it was not a magnet. Its constancy was born from a brilliant system of interlocking gears, a mechanical computer on wheels. Deep within its carriage, a complex gear train was connected directly to the chariot's wheels. Every turn the chariot made was measured, calculated, and then precisely counteracted. If the chariot turned 90 degrees to the right, the gears drove the bronze figure 90 degrees to the left. No matter the path, the figure's orientation to the southern direction remained locked, a feat of pure kinetic intelligence. This was the world's first practical application of differential gearing, a concept that would not find its way to the West for over a millennium. Think of the differential in a modern car, that bulky component between the drive wheels. When you take a corner, your outer wheel has to travel a longer path than the inner one. The differential allows them to rotate at different speeds, preventing skidding and giving you a smooth turn. The south-pointing chariot used this exact same principle in reverse, not to accommodate differing wheel speeds, but to use the difference to perform a calculation and maintain a fixed direction. For Chinese emperors, this device was more than a tool, it was a potent symbol. It demonstrated a celestial mandate, a technological supremacy that could command the very laws of motion to serve the state. Its presence in a military procession was a declaration that the empire could not be lost, that it possessed a guidance system immune to deception or confusion. Yet, this incredible invention was lost and rediscovered multiple times throughout Chinese history. Each dynasty seemed to forget the precise mechanical recipe, only for a brilliant engineer to later reconstruct it from descriptions, a cycle of loss and reawakening that speaks to the fragility of complex knowledge. How could such a precise mechanical computer be conceived without the mathematical theories of modern engineering? The answer lies in a profound, intuitive understanding of motion and geometry, a hands-on genius that could visualize the interaction of gears as a physical representation of a mathematical truth. This chariot was not merely pointing south, it was pointing the way to a future where machines could think for us, its bronze finger tracing a direct line to the computational heart of our own world. That rhythmic click from within the cart was the sound of the ancient world measuring itself. On the vast, straight Roman roads, a hidden mechanism was at work, a device known as the Greek odometer. Attributed to engineers like Heron of Alexandria, this was the classical equivalent of the trip meter in your car. Picture the journey from the inside. A traveler would be jostling along, perhaps hearing nothing but the creak of wood and the clatter of hooves, but beneath them, connected to the cart's axle, a sophisticated gear train was silently counting. For every revolution of the wheel, a series of progressively smaller gears would turn. The genius was in the ratio. A Roman mile was 1,000 paces, about 4,850 of our feet. To measure this, the mechanism was calibrated so that after exactly 400 revolutions of the cart's wheel, a final gear would complete a full rotation. This gear had a single, strategically placed peg that would catch a lever. The lever would lift, release a pebble from a hopper, and drop it with a definitive clatter into a metal box. The traveler would hear that click and know they had covered another mile. The cart itself had become a mechanical surveyor, its memory stored in a collection of pebbles. The implications for administering an empire were profound. With these measured miles, the Romans could accurately map their territories, calculate taxes based on distance traveled by goods, and plan the logistics for moving legions with unprecedented efficiency. This was not a toy, it was the backbone of imperial control, transforming the qualitative experience of a long journey into a precise, quantifiable number. The conceptual leap from that box of pebbles to the digital number on your car's dashboard is vanishingly small. Both are counters, one mechanical and one electronic, tracking the same fundamental unit, the rotation of a wheel. It forces us to ask a simple but powerful question. Could any great empire have been built without first learning to measure the land it sought to rule? This obsession with quantification, with turning the fluid world into fixed numbers, would lead to other instruments of astonishing precision, devices that sought to capture something even more elusive than distance. A palace official presses a seal firmly into soft clay, creating a single, perfect symbol. He repeats the motion, stamping a spiral of identical characters onto a round disc of wet clay before firing it solid. In 1908, archaeologists excavating the Minoan palace of Phaistos on Crete unearthed this very object, a clay disc roughly 15 centimeters across, dated to the second millennium before the Common Era. Its discovery sent shockwaves through the academic world that have not subsided since. The Phaistos disc is covered on both sides with 241 impressions, arranged in a spiral from the outer edge toward the center. These are not random scratches or freehand drawings. Each symbol is a crisp, distinct pictograph, stamped into the clay using 45 different individual seals. This means someone, over 3,000 years ago, possessed a set of reusable type to imprint a sequence of ideas onto a portable medium. It is the world's oldest known example of movable type, a technology that would not be widely seen again until Johannes Gutenberg's printing press in the 15th century. The disk is a locked vault of information, and we have lost the key. Linguists and archaeologists have proposed countless theories for its message. Is it a religious hymn to a forgotten goddess, a legal treaty between kingdoms, a list of soldiers' names, or perhaps the rulebook for a sophisticated board game? The spiral could be read from the rim inward or from the center outward. Some symbols are utterly unique, showing a shielded warrior, a captive, a beehive, and a boat. But without a bilingual text or another similar object for comparison, the code remains unbroken. This singularity is the heart of the mystery. No other disk, no other stamped document, and no duplicate seals have ever been found in Minoan Crete or anywhere else in the world. It stands utterly alone. Was it an import from a now vanished culture, a single, brilliant experiment that never caught on? Or is it a lone survivor from a whole class of stamped documents that were made from perishable materials like wax or leather, leaving no trace for modern excavators? The conceptual leap the disk represents is staggering. It demonstrates a desire to standardize communication, to reproduce text quickly and uniformly. The journey from those stamped clay symbols to the metal type of a printing press, and then to the digital fonts on your screen, is a direct line of technological descent. Every time you send a text message filled with standardized emojis, you are participating in a tradition of symbolic communication that the Phaistos disk might represent one of the very first attempts to systematize. What other methods of encoding and transmitting information were born in ancient workshops, only to vanish without a single other example surviving? This solitary clay circle forces us to confront a profound possibility that entire systems of writing and knowledge transfer may have risen and fallen, leaving behind only the ghost of their existence in artifacts like this. The gentle, rhythmic groaning of a wooden cylinder along the Nile's banks was the sound of survival itself. Inside a tilted, hollow tube, a broad screw turned steadily, its lower end dipping into the life-giving river. With every rotation, pockets of water were cradled between the spiral blade and the cylinder wall, lifted upward in a continuous, flowing spiral until they poured out at the top, channeled into thirsty fields. This was the Archimedes screw, a device of such profound simplicity that its basic form has remained virtually unchanged for over 2,000 years. The principle is an elegant dance of geometry and motion. As the screw rotates, each enclosed pocket of water slides up the inclined plane of the blade, trapped by the confines of the cylinder, until gravity pulls it out at the highest point. It is a way of turning circular motion into a steady, uphill flow, a mechanical answer to one of humanity's oldest challenges. Its variations were as practical as they were brilliant. A single farmer could power a small version with a hand crank. For larger tasks, it was harnessed to a patient ox walking in a circle or connected to the sails of a windmill, lifting vast quantities of water with almost no human effort. The Romans saw its potential beyond agriculture, using massive screws to drain water from the deep, flooded mines of Spain and to keep the bilges of their cargo ships dry. The screw's genius lies in its incredible efficiency and rugged simplicity. With no delicate valves or precisely fitted pistons to clog or break, it could handle muddy, debris-filled water that would destroy more complex pumps. It was easy to build from local wood or metal and required almost no maintenance, making it a technology that could be owned and repaired by the common farmer, not just an imperial engineer. You can find its direct descendants working today in some of our most critical infrastructure. Modern wastewater treatment plants use enormous, polished steel Archimedes screws to lift raw sewage into the first stages of the cleaning process, their robust design perfectly suited for the harsh, abrasive environment. In agriculture, the same principle is used in combines and grain elevators to move dry, loose materials like wheat and corn gently and efficiently without crushing the kernels. It is a design so perfect for its purpose that it has never needed a fundamental redesign. So why is such a flawless solution to a universal problem often relegated to the footnotes of history? Perhaps its very simplicity works against it. It lacks the dramatic flair of a steam engine or the intricate mystery of a geared computer. It simply works day after day, century after century, its quiet reliability making it almost invisible. This mastery over moving fluids invites us to look for other hydraulic innovations, other ways the ancients learned to command the flow of water itself. A gentle warmth radiated from the mosaic floor of a Roman villa in cold, damp Britain. While winter winds howled outside, the family inside walked barefoot on heated tiles, their home a sanctuary of comfort achieved through an invisible marvel, the Hypocaust. This was not a simple fire in a hearth but central heating engineered on a grand scale. In a basement chamber, a constant fire blazed in a furnace, its flames never entering the living spaces. The hot air and gases it produced were channeled into a narrow, empty space beneath the entire floor, which was raised on hundreds of short, sturdy brick pillars called pillae. This cavity, the suspensory, acted as a massive heat exchanger. The warmth would then rise naturally through specially designed hollow box tiles embedded within the walls, creating a system of radiant heat that enveloped every room in a consistent, gentle embrace before the spent air finally escaped through terracotta flues in the roof. The engineering was precise, a delicate balance between creating enough draft to pull the heat through the entire system and preventing the deadly buildup of smoke or the terrifying risk of setting the wooden parts of the structure ablaze. This technology defined Roman comfort, from the steamy caldarium of public baths to the private bedrooms of country villas and the long barracks of frontier legions. Its principle is identical to the radiant floor heating systems being installed in modern luxury homes today, where hot water circulates through pipes under the flooring. The Hypocaust was the ancient version of that, using air instead of water, and its basic physics of convective heat transfer is the same force that warms your home through forced air vents. So why did we spend centuries huddling around drafty, inefficient fireplaces after the Romans had perfected whole house heating? The collapse of the empire shattered the specialized labor and organized maintenance these systems required. The knowledge of how to build and safely manage a Hypocaust faded away, a victim of economic collapse and social fragmentation, leaving humanity to rediscover central comfort a millennium later. This loss of everyday luxury makes you wonder what other simple comforts vanished into the Dark Ages, forgotten amenities that shaped daily life as profoundly as any weapon or ship. A mounted warrior leans into the charge, his body becoming one with the galloping horse. His feet are anchored in two simple metal loops, and this connection changes everything. With the stability provided by the stirrups, he can rise in the saddle, bracing his entire body to couch a heavy lance under his arm. The full momentum of the horse transfers through his rigid frame into the lance's point, delivering an impact that could shatter an enemy line. Before this invention, a rider was essentially a passenger, relying on the strength of his thighs to stay mounted while swinging a sword. The metal stirrup, likely first forged in China around the 3rd century, transformed the rider from a man on a horse into a unified, unstoppable weapon. Military historians point to this as a pivotal moment in combat. The stirrup provided a stable, triangulated platform, allowing a warrior to stand and leverage his weight, putting the full force of the horse behind every thrust and swing. This was not just an improvement, it was a revolution in mounted warfare. From its origins in East Asia, the technology traveled west along trade routes, reaching Europe by the 8th century. Its adoption there enabled the rise of the heavily armored knight, the central figure of feudal warfare for centuries. The social and economic structures of feudalism, built around the military service of these elite cavalrymen, were fundamentally shaped by this simple loop of metal. But the stirrup's influence galloped far beyond the battlefield. It made riding more secure and less exhausting, opening up new possibilities for long-distance travel and communication across empires. The comfort it provided helped develop the refined arts of horsemanship and the equestrian sports we know today. Look at a modern saddle, and you will see stirrups that are virtually identical in form and function to those used 1,000 years ago. It is a design so perfectly suited to its purpose that it has never needed a fundamental redesign. How is it possible that such a basic object, a piece of bent metal and a leather strap, could redirect the flow of history, build social hierarchies, and reshape continents? Its enduring legacy forces us to look for other humble innovations, tools so perfectly simple they became invisible, yet their absence would collapse the world we know. A city shimmering in the desert heat seems an unlikely place to find a refuge from the sun. Yet on the rooftops of ancient Persia, rows of tall, chimney-like towers rose against the sky, not to release smoke, but to capture the invisible breath of the wind. These were the badgers, the windcatchers, and they turned entire cities into oases of coolness through sheer architectural genius. This was not a machine, but a building that functioned as one. The principle is a beautiful lesson in passive thermodynamics. Windcatchers are designed with openings facing the prevailing cool breezes. As wind enters the high tower, it is funneled down a central shaft directly into the heart of the living space below. But the true magic happens even when the air is still. The structure itself creates a convective loop. The sun-baked air inside the tower becomes hot and rises, escaping from the top. This rising column of warm air pulls cooler, denser air from the shaded areas at the base of the building up through the tower, creating a constant, gentle draft. The cooling effect was often supercharged by channeling this airflow over a small indoor pool or a kanat, an underground water channel. This introduced evaporative cooling, where the air passing over the water's surface would drop in temperature as the water molecules changed from liquid to vapor, much like the feeling of a cool breeze blowing across a lake. The most sophisticated designs were multi-directional, with vertical fins dividing the tower into several shafts. No matter which way the wind blew, at least one shaft would catch it, forcing air down while the other shafts acted as outlets for the rising warm air, creating a self-regulating ventilation system. Modern environmental designers study these structures with awe, seeing in them the blueprint for today's most advanced sustainable architecture. The principles are identical to those used in solar chimneys and passive stack ventilation in green buildings, which use natural heat and pressure differences to move air without any electrical input. So why do we rely so heavily on energy-hungry air conditioning when such elegant, zero-power solutions have been perfected for millennia? The answer lies in our modern reliance on centralized, high-energy systems and a disconnect from the local environment. The Windcatcher was a deeply contextual technology, perfectly adapted to its specific climate and culture. Its passive mastery over the environment makes you wonder what other sustainable wisdom from the past could cool our cities and warm our homes without costing the earth. An intricate web of colorful cords, each knot tied with deliberate precision, held the entire economic memory of the Inca Empire. This was the Quipu, a device of astonishing complexity that recorded everything from tax rolls and census data to astronomical cycles and the legends of history, all without a single written word. An Inca administrator known as a Quipu did not write. He wove information into a tactile, three-dimensional language. the system's elegance was in its physical grammar. The color of each cord, the type of fiber, the specific placement of a knot, and even the direction of the knot's twist all carried distinct meaning. A decimal system was encoded through different knot types, with clusters representing units, tens, hundreds, and beyond, turning a tangled-looking bundle into a precise mathematical ledger. But was it only numbers? Some anthropologists studying the few hundred quipus that survived the conquest believe certain structures might have been narrative, encoding stories, laws, and songs through a symbolic syntax we can no longer decipher. The Quipu were the living processors of this system, trained from childhood to read, create, and interpret these knotted archives. They were the human hardware required to access the data, the librarians of a civilization's soul. This entire world of knowledge was systematically dismantled during the Spanish conquest, the conquistadors, viewing the quipus as idolatrous objects or primitive tally sticks, destroyed them by the thousands. Worse, they methodically targeted the Quipu themselves, killing the very men who held the keys to understanding this system. In a single, brutal generation, a fully functional information technology, one that had managed the largest empire in the pre-Columbian Americas, was rendered mute. The conceptual leap from a Quipu to a modern hard drive is not as vast as it seems. Both are physical media that store information in a coded state. The Quipu used knots on strings, while a hard drive uses microscopic magnetic charges on a spinning platter, a binary language of ones and zeros. Both are useless without a specialized interpreter, whether it is a trained Quipu or a computer's central processing unit. What vast epics, what detailed histories of a mountain empire were lost when the last keeper died without passing on his knowledge. The silence of those knotted cords is a haunting reminder that history is not just written by the victors, but also erased by them. This sophisticated, non-textual recording system pushes us to consider how other civilizations captured their reality not in ink, but in the very fabric of their world. Massive concrete blocks, each weighing several tons and shaped like a giant, twisted H, are tossed into the churning sea during a winter storm. They look like abstract sculptures, yet they are performing a precise and violent dance. This is the Dolos, a modern armor unit designed to protect harbor walls from the ocean's endless assault. Its genius is not in resisting the waves, but in collaborating with them. When a 20-foot wall of water smashes into a breakwater made of these interlocking shapes, the force is transformed. The energy doesn't hit a solid, immovable wall. Instead, it flows through a chaotic, porous structure. Each Dolos block is designed to lock randomly with its neighbors, creating a flexible, interwoven mat. The wave's energy is dissipated into a million tiny movements, a jostling and shifting that converts destructive power into harmless friction. Coastal engineers describe it as a lesson in humility, working with natural forces rather than fighting them. This is a sophisticated evolution of the simple rubble mounds the Romans used at harbors like Caesarea Maritima. They simply piled massive stones to create a slope that would break the waves. The Dolos takes that ancient idea and refines it, using geometric complexity to achieve the same goal with far greater efficiency and resilience. The design was born from necessity in the 1960s, after traditional breakwaters made of rectangular blocks repeatedly failed, their rigid structures shattered by the sea they were meant to tame. The principle at work is timeless, using shape to manage force. It is the same fundamental challenge an ancient engineer faced when stacking stones, just expressed through the modern language of reinforced concrete. What other modern infrastructural problems, from flooding to erosion, could be solved by looking past our own rigid solutions and embracing the ancient wisdom of working in harmony with nature's chaos? This idea of a simple, brilliant shape solving a complex problem leads us to another device, one that captured the essence of time itself in a perfectly balanced form. A lone rider thunders down a stone-paved road in the dead of night, his only light a sliver of moon. He is not carrying a personal letter, but the fate of an empire. This was the Cursus Publicus, the Roman state post, a logistical web that bound the vast territories from Britain to Syria into a single, responsive organism. Established by Emperor Augustus, this was not a public mail service, but the circulatory system of imperial power. Its efficiency was breathtaking. A complex network of way stations, called mutations, were spaced every 10 to 15 miles along the Great Road. At each one, a rider could exchange his tired horse for a fresh, government-owned mount in minutes without even breaking stride. For longer journeys or for officials traveling with luggage, larger stations, the mansions, provided overnight lodging, food, and wheeled vehicles. A message could travel from Rome to the Rhine frontier, a distance of over 700 miles, in less than a week, a speed that would not be consistently matched in Europe until the 18th century. This system moved more than just papyrus scrolls. It carried tax revenues secured in strongboxes, ferried governors and military commanders to their posts, and delivered critical military intelligence that allowed legions to be repositioned to meet a threat before an enemy even knew they were coming. The entire operation was funded by a special tax on the provinces, a heavy burden that underscored its vital importance to centralized control. The modern world runs on this same principle. The hub-and-spoke model of a national postal service, where sorting centers act as the hubs, is a direct descendant. The frantic overnight relay of packages by express courier companies, with planes and trucks synchronized for a single parcel's journey, is the Cursus Publicus reborn in the digital age. So what happens when such a system shatters? The collapse of the Roman post in the 5th and 6th centuries was not just an administrative failure, it was a neurological catastrophe for the West. Provinces were plunged into informational darkness, unable to coordinate with a distant capital or with each other. Local powers became isolated kingdoms, and the very idea of a unified Europe fractured for 1,000 years. How different might history have been if that steady rhythm of hoofbeats had never fallen silent? This mastery over distance through organized communication finds a chilling parallel in another system of control, one that did not move information across land, but projected authority instantly across a city. The silence inside Zhang Heng's bronze urn was a space filled with mechanical possibility. For centuries, the question of what lay within that sealed vessel has been one of history's most tantalizing engineering puzzles. How could a device from the 2nd century accurately detect the direction of a distant earthquake using only the subtle tremors that arrived first? Modern mechanical engineers have proposed several competing theories, each attempting to reverse engineer the genius of its design. One leading model suggests an inverted pendulum was the heart of the system. Imagine a heavy mass like a large metal ball, balanced precariously atop a narrow rod. This unstable arrangement is incredibly sensitive to the slightest horizontal shift. When the primary wave from a distant quake arrived, it would cause the urn to move, but the inertia of the top-heavy pendulum would make it sway or even topple in the direction opposite to the tremor's origin. This movement could then trip a lever connected to just one of the 8 dragon heads. Another compelling theory proposes a simple suspended mass, a pendulum hanging freely inside the vessel. As the ground moved, the heavy bob would lag behind due to inertia, bumping against a delicate release mechanism positioned at one of the 8 cardinal points. The challenge with this model is sensitivity. A hanging pendulum might not react strongly enough to the faint, long-distance tremors the device was said to detect. Perhaps the most elegant solution involves a system of levers and precariously placed balls. In this reconstruction, a central column holds 8 lightweight arms, each ending in a small cavity holding a metal ball. These arms are delicately balanced. The slightest horizontal sway from a seismic wave would cause just one ball to roll from its perch, falling down a channel to strike a lever that opened the corresponding dragon's mouth. The device didn't need to measure the earthquake's power, only its direction of origin, and a dislodged ball would provide a clear, unambiguous signal. Which of these mechanisms feels most plausible to you? Does the idea of a top-heavy, inverted pendulum seem too fragile, or does its sensitivity perfectly match the historical accounts? The suspended mass model is robust, but would it be sensitive enough? The beauty of this mystery is that each theory has its strengths and weaknesses when held against the ancient texts. They all, however, rely on the same fundamental principle used in every modern seismograph: an inert mass that resists motion while the world moves around it. This deep dive into a single device reveals the immense challenge of reconstructing lost technology. We have the description of its function, but its mechanical soul remains a ghost in the machine, a silent testament to an engineer who found a way to make bronze listen to the whispers of the earth itself. The frozen surface of a Scandinavian fjord becomes a highway with the rasp of polished bone on ice. These were the Viking ulnbone skates, crafted not from forged metal but from the leg bones of horses or cattle. Archaeologists have unearthed these simple runners at dozens of Viking and medieval sites across northern Europe, each one carefully shaped and often drilled with holes for leather securing straps. The technique was straightforward yet brilliant. A traveler would select a large, sturdy bone, flatten its bottom surface for stability, and polish it to a slick, hard finish. To move, they did not push with their feet as we do today. Instead, they gripped a spiked pole, planting it into the ice beside them and pushing off in a rhythmic, gliding motion, much like the modern sport of Nordic skating on cross-country skis. This transformed the long, isolating winters. A journey that might take days to trek around the frozen edges of a lake could be completed in hours, gliding directly across its solid surface. It was a matter of pure efficiency, turning a season of hardship into one of enhanced mobility for trade, communication, and exploration. The physics at play are identical to any skate you see on an ice rink today. The principle is all about minimizing friction. The narrow, polished bone surface created a tiny point of contact with the ice, generating just enough heat from the friction of movement to create a thin layer of water, a microscopic lubricant that allowed for a smooth, continuous glide. That fundamental goal of reducing drag is the very same science behind the thin steel blades of figure skates, the long runners of speed skates, and even the polyurethane wheels of rollerblades that simulate the same gliding motion on pavement. How many other brilliant solutions were born from simply looking at the materials at hand and seeing a possibility where others saw a limitation? This resourceful adaptation of a common material points toward a different kind of ingenuity, one that sought not to traverse the land, but to build upon it with structures that have stubbornly refused to fall. The Mesopotamian farmer's walk was a study in rhythmic efficiency, a quiet revolution in step with the seasons. Behind a simple plow, a hollow tube led down to the freshly opened earth, and from a funnel above, seeds trickled into the furrow at a perfect depth and spacing. This was the Mesopotamian seed drill, an innovation so fundamental it reshaped the very relationship between humanity and the land. Before this device, sowing was a chaotic affair, with seeds broadcast by hand across a field. Much of the precious grain was eaten by birds, washed away by rain, or fell on soil too shallow or too deep to sprout. The seed drill changed everything. It conserved seed, sometimes cutting the amount needed by more than half. It placed each kernel in the ideal environment for germination, protected and nourished at a consistent depth. And because the seeds were sown in neat rows, the tedious work of weeding and the efficiency of harvesting were transformed. What had been an act of hope became a process of precision. This was not a complex machine, but a simple funnel attached to a plow, a marriage of two existing tools that created a new paradigm for food production. The profound mystery is why such an obvious and powerful advantage did not sweep across the ancient world. For reasons lost to time, the knowledge of this drill faded from Mesopotamia. Centuries later, the same concept was independently born in ancient China. And then, unbelievably, it was lost again, only to be famously reinvented in Europe during the agricultural revolution of the 16th and 17th centuries, where it was hailed as a world-changing invention. The journey from that Mesopotamian funnel to the modern air seeder is a direct line of descent. Today's massive, computer-guided drills still perform the same core function, placing seeds with millimeter accuracy, using GPS and sensors to optimize the placement that a simple tube first achieved. How many other simple, transformative ideas have flickered into existence only to be forgotten, forcing later generations to believe they were the first to see the light? This cycle of loss and rediscovery in something as vital as growing food forces us to look at the foundation of civilization itself and wonder what other essential knowledge has slipped through our fingers. The same river that carved the valley now quenched its fields not through backbreaking labor, but with the graceful swing of a long, weighted pole. This is the Shadoof, an irrigation tool so perfectly balanced it feels almost effortless. An Egyptian farmer would stand at the river's edge, pulling down on a rope to dip a leather bucket into the Nile. As the bucket filled, the real magic began. A large counterweight of mud or stone, fixed to the opposite end of the pivoting pole, would do the heavy work. The farmer simply guided the motion, using the weight's descent to lift the full bucket high into the air, then swinging the entire apparatus to pour the water into a waiting canal. This was physics made tangible, a lever and fulcrum system that turned a heavy lift into a manageable pivot. Its construction was the soul of simplicity, built from a wooden pole, a stone weight, and a bucket, materials any village could provide. This accessibility meant that even a single family could reliably water their plot, expanding agriculture away from the soggy immediate banks and up into the drier, more fertile land beyond. The Shadoof's influence did not end with the pharaohs. You can see its direct mechanical descendant in the towering construction cranes that silhouette our cities. The crane's long jib is the pole, the massive concrete counterweights at its rear are the stone, and the load swinging from its cable is the bucket of water, all scaling up the same ancient principle to move thousands of tons. Even the humble well sweep, used for centuries to draw water from deep wells, operates on this identical idea of balanced force. Why has this basic design persisted for millennia when so many complex machines have faded? Its endurance is a powerful lesson in elegant efficiency. It solves a universal human problem with a minimum of parts and a maximum of intelligence, asking not for advanced materials or energy, but for a deep understanding of the world's fundamental rules. This timeless effectiveness makes you wonder what other profound solutions are hiding in plain sight, their genius masked by their beautiful simplicity. A sharp crack splits the air, followed by the terrifying whir of a heavy stone projectile flying toward a fortress wall. This is the sound of the Roman ballista, a masterpiece of ancient artillery that turned twisted rope into a force of pure destruction. At its heart was a principle of stored energy that any modern engineer would recognize: torsion. Two massive wooden arms were not attached to a simple bow, but inserted into two separate, tightly wound bundles of sinew or horsehair known as skeins. These skeins were the engine. A crew would winch back a slider, using a complex ratchet system to rotate the arms backward against the incredible resistance of the twisted ropes. This act stored a phenomenal amount of potential energy, like drawing a bowstring to its absolute limit. When the release mechanism was triggered, the skeins unwound with explosive force, swinging the arms forward to slam against a padded crossbar and hurl a stone ball or a heavy bolt with devastating speed and accuracy. The evolution of this weapon was a story of scaling up power. It began as a massive arrow-shooting device, but Roman engineers adapted it into a true stone-throwing engine capable of systematically battering stone walls into rubble. The sizes varied dramatically. The portable carabalisti were mounted on carts for mobility in field battles, acting as the field artillery of their day. The massive, static ballistae used in sieges were monstrous constructions that required teams of soldiers to operate, their projectiles capable of clearing entire sections of a fortress parapet. Imagine the engineering skill required to calibrate such a weapon. Each skein had to be twisted to exactly the right tension to synchronize the arms, ensuring the projectile flew true. The slightest miscalculation in the rope's thickness, the winding tension, or the weight of the stone would send the shot hopelessly off target. It was a machine built from organic materials, yet it demanded a mathematical precision we associate with metal. The principle is identical to the potential energy stored in the coiled spring of a car's suspension, waiting to be released, or the drawn string of a compound bow. How did Roman artillerymen, without modern instruments, develop such an intuitive grasp of physics and material science? This powerful weapon of war was just one expression of a broader military engineering genius that reshaped the ancient world, a capability that extended far beyond breaking down walls and into the very art of building them. A Han Dynasty artisan spins a decorated ceramic bowl, and for a fleeting moment the painted figures seem to come alive. This was not magic, but an early grasp of a fundamental truth about human perception, the principle of persistence of vision. Ancient Chinese texts describe a device known as the trotting horse lamp, a type of lantern that was far more than a simple source of light. Paper cutouts of figures, perhaps horses or dancers, were attached to a cylindrical shade positioned around a central candle. As the flame burned, it heated the air, causing the shade to rotate on a simple pivot, much like a crude turbine. The rising heat provided the power, and the rotating cutouts would cast a continuous, moving shadow on the walls of a dark room, creating a primitive but undeniable animation. The effect relied on the way our brain processes visual information, retaining an image for a fraction of a second after it is gone. When one shadow replaced the next in rapid succession, the brain blended them into a single, fluid motion, a galloping horse or a whirling dancer. This simple thermal toy demonstrated the core concept that would one day become cinema. The idea that a sequence of still images presented quickly enough creates the powerful illusion of life. Centuries later, inventors in the 1800s would rediscover this exact principle with devices like the phenakistoscope, a spinning disc with slits that revealed a sequence of drawings, and the zoetrope, a drum with images on the inside that came alive when spun and viewed through slots. These 19th century novelties were direct descendants of the trotting horse lamp, and they formed the crucial bridge that led directly to the first motion picture cameras and projectors. The line from that ancient Chinese lantern spinning from candle heat to the digital projector in a modern movie theater is unbroken. It makes you wonder, If the knowledge of these perceptual tricks had been combined with the lens-grinding skills of the Assyrians or the intricate gearing of the Greeks, could the concept of projected film have emerged 1,000 years earlier? What stories would have been told, what histories preserved in motion, if that single thread of inquiry had been pulled a little harder? This exploration of visual illusion reveals a pattern not just of lost technology, but of lost potential, where the seeds of a future world were sown in a past that did not yet have the soil to let them grow. A terracotta seat in a Minoan palace held a secret far ahead of its time. Within the labyrinthine palace of Knossos on Crete, archaeologists uncovered a remarkable installation dating back over 3,500 years. It was a flush toilet, a sophisticated terracotta pan connected to an overhead cistern and a complex stone sewer system that ran beneath the palace floors. When a noble needed to use it, a servant would pour water from a reservoir into a channel, sending a rush that carried waste away through the meticulously engineered drains. This was not a primitive hole in the ground, but a deliberate application of hydraulic engineering for the sake of comfort and public health. The Minoans possessed an advanced understanding of sanitation that revolved around moving water efficiently. Their entire palace was threaded with terracotta pipes, jointed and tapered to prevent leaks, and a network of stone drains that channeled rainwater and waste out of the living areas. The principle of using flowing water to maintain cleanliness is identical to the one in your own bathroom. That ancient Minoan flush is the direct, if simpler, ancestor of the modern toilet, lacking only the critical S-bend water trap that was invented millennia later to block sewer gases. How did a society in the Bronze Age grasp the importance of such hygiene, only for that knowledge to be utterly forgotten? After the collapse of the Minoan and other Bronze Age civilizations, this concept of organized sanitation virtually vanished from Europe. For centuries, the comforts of private plumbing and public health infrastructure were lost, replaced by far more primitive and dangerous methods of waste disposal. The simple luxury of a clean, private flush toilet became a distant dream for over 3,000 years. This regression was more than just a loss of comfort. It was a surrender to disease and filth that shaped daily life for generations. What does it say about our own civilization that such a fundamental technology for health and dignity could be invented, celebrated, and then completely erased from human memory? The story of Archimedes' heat ray reads like a scene from a myth. During the Roman siege of Syracuse, the legend claims the city's defenders did not just rely on the terrifying claw. They allegedly arrayed themselves along the seawall, each holding a large, polished bronze shield. On a commander's signal, they angled these makeshift mirrors to reflect the intense Mediterranean sun, focusing a single, searing point of light onto the wooden hulls of the approaching Roman fleet. According to the tale, smoke began to curl, and then flames erupted, turning ships into infernos before they could even reach the shore. This account, passed down through historians like Lucian centuries after the fact, presents a breathtaking image of scientific genius weaponized. But is it a record of fact or a powerful legend growing from the seed of Archimedes' very real reputation for brilliance? The line between the two is incredibly thin. Modern physicists have scrutinized this story with the tools of experimental science. The principle itself is sound, the same one a child uses with a magnifying glass to burn a leaf. A parabolic reflector, which a polished shield could approximate, can concentrate parallel rays of sunlight to a focal point, generating intense heat. The challenge is not the theory, but the practical execution. To achieve the temperatures needed to ignite seasoned, possibly wet, wood at a distance of several hundred feet would require a large array of mirrors, all held with unwavering precision on a single, small spot on a moving ship, all while under attack. Several modern teams have attempted to recreate the feat with varying results. One famous experiment at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 2005 used 127 mirrors and managed to char and then ignite a stationary wooden mock-up of a ship. It worked, but only under perfect, controlled conditions that a chaotic battlefield could never provide. This is where historians cast their doubt. No contemporary Roman account of the siege mentions this terrifying weapon, which would have been so psychologically devastating that ignoring it seems unlikely. The story only appears in texts written hundreds of years later, when Archimedes had already become a legendary, almost mythical figure. It is entirely possible that the heat ray is a later embellishment, a story crafted to symbolize his genius rather than document an actual event. Yet the very concept is far from fantasy. Look at any modern concentrated solar power plant, like the Ivanpah facility in the Mojave Desert. Vast fields of motorized mirrors called heliostats track the sun with robotic precision, all focusing their energy on a central tower. The heat generated there is immense, reaching temperatures over 500 degrees Celsius, used to create steam and drive turbines for electricity. This is Archimedes' heat ray realized on an industrial scale, proving the underlying science is profoundly real. So where does that leave the legend? Perhaps the truth is not a binary of fact or fiction. Maybe Archimedes did experiment with optics and reflectors, perhaps even demonstrating the principle in a way that was so astonishing it became woven into the story of the siege. The legend endures because it touches on a deep human truth. Our fascination with the moment pure intellect becomes an unstoppable force. It forces us to wonder how many other incredible ideas from the ancient world are remembered not as they were, but as the powerful symbols they became. A scholar stands on a windswept tower beneath a canopy of stars, turning a cool brass disc in his hands. This is the astrolabe, the smartphone of the medieval world, a pocket-sized universe that could predict the sunrise, calculate latitude, and tell time with breathtaking precision. Its face was a complex map of the heavens, a planispheric projection that ingeniously flattened the celestial sphere onto a two-dimensional surface. Historians of science marvel at this innovation, a mathematical feat that allowed a user to model the visible sky for any given time and date, transforming abstract astronomy into a practical tool. The device itself was a masterpiece of layered brass. At its foundation was the mater, the mother plate, a disc engraved with a coordinate grid for a specific latitude. Nestled inside it was the reter, a delicate, lace-like cutaway star chart that rotated above the mater, its pointer tips marking the positions of the brightest stars. On the back, the alidade, a sighting rule with pinwheels or small sighting holes, pivoted around a central axis. To use it, you would suspend the astrolabe from your thumb, align the alidade with a known star like Polaris, and read the altitude from the graduated scale on the back. By rotating the reter to match this reading against the engraved grid, the entire night sky was laid bare at your fingertips. This single instrument was a portable observatory. Navigators used it to find their latitude at sea by measuring the sun's height at noon. Monks consulted it to determine the canonical hours of prayer from matins to compline. Scholars cast horoscopes with its intricate alignments, and surveyors measured the heights of buildings and mountains. Its function was strikingly similar to a modern planetarium app or the ephemeris data used by GPS satellites, both of which perform the same celestial calculations, only with silicon chips instead of hand-engraved brass. How did a society without digital processors create such a comprehensive analog computer? The astrolabe was not just a tool, it was a testament to a deep, systematic understanding of the cosmos, a physical expression of the belief that the universe operated on principles that could be held in the palm of your hand. In its elegant geometry, we see the culmination of ancient and medieval ingenuity, a final, fitting symbol for all the brilliant devices that once turned the mysteries of the world into something measurable, manageable, and profoundly human. These brilliant devices did not vanish in a single moment, but faded one secret at a time. Their disappearance was not a mystery of magic, but a sobering lesson in the fragility of human knowledge. Historians of technology point to a recurring pattern of collapse. The intricate trade routes that supplied rare materials like the specific ores for Damascus steel were severed by war. The centralized states that funded grand projects like the Barbegal mill complex crumbled into feudalism. Most critically, the master craftsmen who held the tactile, unwritten secrets of their art, from the smiths who forged wood steel to the Quipu who read the knotted cords, died without passing on their wisdom. This is the true meaning behind the term Dark Ages for many regions, a period of profound technological amnesia where the operating manual for civilization itself was partially erased. The loss of Roman concrete is a perfect example. Its self-healing recipe was not just forgotten, it became incomprehensible, a myth until modern science, with its electron microscopes, could finally decode the pozzolana ash chemistry the Romans took for granted. Today, laboratories are in a race to replicate this ancient marvel, knowing it could lead to concrete that lasts for millennia, reducing the massive environmental cost of constant reconstruction. This is not about mere imitation. The legacy of these lost technologies is often not a direct blueprint, but a conceptual ghost. Modern inventors rarely copy the Antikythera mechanism, but its underlying principle of using geared mechanisms to model complex systems paved the way for all analog computation. We see this pattern of independent rediscovery again and again, like the seed drill being conceived in Mesopotamia, then China, then lost and hailed as a new invention in early modern Europe. It is a cycle of brilliance, loss, and rebirth, so we must ask a difficult question about our own world. What seemingly stable technologies do we rely on that are equally vulnerable? Is our digital knowledge, stored on fragile servers and in proprietary file formats, any more secure than the scrolls of the Library of Alexandria? The story of these 32 devices is a mirror held up to our own civilization, reminding us that progress is not a straight line, but a winding path with many forgotten turns, and that every advancement carries with it the quiet potential for its own disappearance. Our journey through these 32 vanished devices reveals a hidden truth about human progress. It is not a steady climb, but a story of brilliant flashes in the dark, long periods of forgetting, and the relentless, inspired work of rediscovery. From the computational heart of the Antikythera Mechanism to the sustainable cooling of the Persian Windcatcher, the intellectual DNA of these lost inventions is woven into the very fabric of our modern world. They prove that ingenuity is a powerful, recurring force, one that often emerges independently when the time is right, yet also one that can be tragically fragile. This exploration is more than a catalogue of curiosities. It is a vital reminder to look to the past for sustainable solutions, to value and preserve diverse forms of knowledge, and to never, ever underestimate the profound cleverness of our ancestors. The next time you charge your phone or feel the cool air from a vent, remember the long and winding road that brought these comforts to you, a path paved with forgotten genius. If this journey through history's hidden chapters has sparked your curiosity, we invite you to subscribe for more explorations into the echoes of the past. And we would love to hear your thoughts. Which of these vanished devices do you find most incredible? Share your choice in the comments below.